Welcome to Classic Car Secrets. Today we are going to talk about a small thing, lug nuts. They're a huge item that's often overlooked on your car due to their incredibly small size. Today we're going to go through and talk a little bit about the lug nuts we use and why, and then we'll break down a little bit in terms of how they work and some of the theory behind an actual lug nut. If you're a classic car enthusiast working on a project or just dreaming of your next one, this content is for you. I have over 30 years experience buying, building, and wrenching on classic cars, including owning a large-scale muscle car shop for the last 20, where we've upgraded, restored, and built hundreds of 50s, 60s, and 70s muscle cars. I know every part, process, and problem you'll encounter because I've dealt with them all, and believe me, the problems are unending. This is why I created Classic Car Secrets, to help you save the time, money, and countless headaches of learning the hard way. I cover everything from Corvettes to Cougars, Mopars to Mustangs, to name a few. Click the link below to find out more. So if you like this type of content, go ahead and subscribe and like, and also as you go through, you'll see we'll have links below to all of the different products that we endorse here today. There are many different types of lug nuts, and it's extremely important that you use the right lug nut on your car. Got a few here to kind of break down some of the different designs, and we'll go through each one of them. But we've got our traditional acorn lug nuts. We go into a locking lug nut that's more of a tuner spline. It's really not so much a lock, but a lot of people call it a lock. And then we've got a lug nut that we're going to call an ET, also similar to a mag wheel. So to start, this is our mounting seating surface right here. And so this guy has just a tiny little conical tapered seat to him. If you see this lug nut by comparison, you can see how much more mounting area that has, pardon me, with that lock. So on a stock steel wheel, a lot of time you're going to use this guy. He'll lock in real nice, set in there on a steel wheel because the steel wheel is quite strong. If we're going into a slightly worn or used steel wheel or an aluminum wheel, we want that larger bulge because it's going to attach to more surface area, get a better bite, stay tight. So that's why we might use a bulge. Within that, we also will talk about an open lug nut versus a closed lug nut, right? So here's a good example of a closed lug nut. Here's an open lug nut. Same deal, same seat, open, closed. Open is for a longer stud. Sometimes if you have small caps, like a Chevy guy might have a rally cap. If you're a Mopar guy, anybody else, you have a pursuit cap, something like that. A lot of times these taller ones won't fit. These allow you to visually see the stud sticks out. These are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, right? When we work with lug nuts, I like to use these types. The black ones and these chrome ones, these are actually called a tuner lug nut. And they come in all sizes. You can get them in metric or standard, right? But what I like about these is how easily they're splined and they just lock right into your socket. So if you're going into a nice shiny wheel, a nice painted or powder coated wheel, it's so easy to get in there and tighten it as opposed to sitting here and fumbling around, trying to get this big, bulky socket in there to get to your wheels. Another way to protect your wheels other than just using the spline type deal, because they're smaller and so much more nimble to work with, is you can actually use a really nice padded type socket. These are insulated and protective, so they're designed so that if you're grabbing your lug nut, you go to tighten it, you're not going to scratch the wheel. These are very forgiving, so if you have nice wheels, check out the link below and get yourself some of these. In addition to regular lug nuts, we also have an ET design. ET stands for extra thread. So this lug nut here has a little bit of extra thread on the tip of it. This wheel lug nut is a little bit misconceiving because it looks almost like a mag lug nut. A mag lug nut is often going to be a little bit longer and it goes down into the wheel. The reason it does that on a mag lug nut is because wheels are lug centric, which means the lug nuts are what are holding the wheel centered, right? So having this design go down inside the wheel and onto the stud is actually going to keep that wheel centered, locked on for safety, done deal. ET, when we talk about that, is basically any lug nut of any traditional design, but with this extra little bit of shank here. Let's imagine we had some short studs or some worn studs, or a wheel design is open a little bit in the center. You'll want this to go down inside the wheel so you actually get more thread capture, right? That's why we're calling it an ET extra thread. When we talk about lug nuts, they're going to be sized by diameter and threads per inch. So a lot of Chevy and GM guys are familiar with what we call a 7/16-20. Ford guys and some of the heavier duty wheels are 1/2 inch -20. Certainly we've got metric M15 by 150, etc. What a 7/16 20 means is we've got a 7/16 stud thickness and 20 threads per inch. So that's going to be your length and your width. So it's very important that you cross-reference and get the right lug nut for your wheel. Don't miss that, because sometimes you can take, if it's a metric M14 or M12, and thread a 1/2 inch 20 on there. Oh, it went on tight. Yeah, because you totally cross-threaded the thread. So it's very important that you see that. A lot of cars are going to have different lug nuts, different studs on the front and the rear. Depends if brakes have been changed, a heavier duty rear end, something like that. Guys running wheel with brakes, a lot of the times you notice you're going to go to a bigger 1/2 inch. So just be cognizant of that. Another slippery trick is also early Mopars. Generally early, pre-70s, and then even some of the GMs 65 and earlier had a tricky left-hand lug nut on the driver's side rear that if you try to loosen it, lefty-loosey, you're tightening it. So be aware of that, okay? When you're tightening your lug nuts, it's very important that we use a cross pattern in order to make sure we're equally torquing our lug nuts down. Very important, so it allows the wheel to kind of wiggle its way down and seat tightly. Certainly when you're doing so, you want to make sure that you're using a quality torque wrench. A lot of people subscribe to German torque, which is Gudentite. I like to see you take a nice quality torque wrench that you'll see below as well, and set your torque specs to manufacturer. Often gives you some specs. I would say most of them are going to be 80 to 100 pounds. We want to make sure they're tight enough on there. If they're too tight, you could stretch the studs and wear them out, causing premature breakage and failure. If they're too loose, you're going to get a wiggly wobbly wheel, which is a big problem. So just make sure to keep in mind torquing your wheels. For those of you that are going to tighten your wheels using an air gun or a pneumatic gun or a really strong electric gun, a lot of the times what you can do is you can purchase a set of torque sticks. These are torque limiting, so by color they'll have a different weight. So you can use these, put them on your impact, run it as tight as you want, and this is actually going to deflect and kind of impact and slow down basically the force. So if you were to take this and you had your gun set at 120, you had an 80-pound torque stick, 80 pounds, done deal. So one other thing to make sure you consider when you're working on wheels, lug nuts, and studs is making sure that you have proper thread engagement. What that means is, as wide as the bolt is, you want to get at least that much of thread down on the bolt. It's very important in order to secure your wheels properly. So if you find that your stud is too short and you're not getting enough coming out of the wheel, feel free to take those out, upgrade to longer studs. There'll be videos on the internet, and probably we'll do one as well where you can check out how to do that. But proper stud engagement is key. Hopefully we've been able to share enough about lug nuts here to make you feel a little bit more comfortable in making the right selection for your car. Make sure you protect those wheels, make sure you got those wheels tight. If you have any other questions, feel free to post in the comments, share a little bit of information, ask a question. If we can help, we're happy to chime in. Check out the links below. You'll find the products that we love and endorse. So thank you for tuning in to Classic Car Secrets.